Okay, welcome to Accelerated Math 30, 60, 90 triangles. Okay, we're dealing with right triangles here, and we're given an angle and we're trying to find side lengths. Normally, you might go with the trigonometric functions like cosine, sine, and tangent, and you can do that with this if you're real comfortable with that, but what we're trying to get you to see is that when it's a 30, 60, 90 triangle, what that's referring to is that you've got an angle of 60 degrees, you've got an angle of 30 degrees, and a 90-degree angle that you can use some special rules with this that makes it a little bit quicker, that you don't really have to use sine, cosine, and tangent. Let me just share with you what those are. If I take a basic 30, 60, 90, I'll call this the 30, and this the 60. Then what we're going to do is we're going to look at the shortest side, which is exactly opposite of the 30-degree angle. In any triangle, if you pick the smallest angle, you go opposite of that. You can have the smallest side. I'm going to put a 1 right here. If you go to the hypotenuse, which is directly across from the right angle, now I'm going to put a 2 there. And if you go across from the 60-degree angle, what we call the long side, not the longest because that's the hypotenuse, but the long side, we're going to call that square root of 3. And I'll try to make some sense of that in just a minute. Okay. For example, if I look at this, and same thing, 30, 60, 90, if this is 10 over here in terms of length, then the hypotenuse is 20, and this long side over here is 10 on the square root of 3. And let's see how that works on this particular one. So what they've given us is they've given us this 60-degree angle here. So this is the long side, and they're giving us that 60 degrees, so we know that this is a 30, 60, 90. We know that because 90 degrees got used up here, and 30 is what's left over for this unknown angle over here. So now we know that. They've told us that the hypotenuse is 12, so let's use this same logic over here. Over here, the hypotenuse was 20. That made the short side 10. Okay? If this one's 12, that makes the short side, that's right, 6. Okay? Now, if the short side was 10, then the long side was what we say 10 on the square root of 3, or 10 radical 3. It means 10 times the square root of 3. So then if the short side here is 6, then the long side must be 6 on the square root of 3. Alright, so x is 6, y is 6 on the square root of 3. Nicely done. Alright, so it's critical on these things that you recognize where the hypotenuse is, and then where the short side is, and where the long side is. Here we're given a description in triangle ABC. They tell me that angle A is the right angle, so I'm going to put A over here. Angle B is the 30-degree angle, so B is going to be over here with 30 degrees, and then that leaves 60 left over. That must be C. They tell me they say if AB, this side over here, is 22 feet, then they want you to find BC, so they're asking for the hypotenuse. Alright, so a little bit different scenario. Last one we were given the hypotenuse, we worked backwards to get the short and then the long. Here we're given the long. This one is probably one of the more complicated ones. So in our previous example, we said 1, square root 3, and 2. Okay? When we were given the hypotenuse, we worked backwards. We divided that by 2 to get this short side. Here we're given the long side of 22, and this is kind of our rule, that is the square root of 3 times the short side. So if we're going to work backwards to this one, we're going to do 22 divided by square root of 3. And then we're going to work from the short side to the hypotenuse. Now some people might work directly over the hypotenuse, but I like to do it this way. Go to the short side, divide by square root of 3, and then what do we do from short side to hypotenuse? Well, we double it. Okay, so we're going to do 22 on the square root of 3, or I'm sorry, 22 over the square root of 3, and we're going to double it. Alright, now, a couple ways we can do this. I want you to, well, if you double this and we multiply this, I'm going to just turn this into a fraction, so this is 44 on the square root of 3, but I want you to notice that 44 on the square root of 3 is not an answer. So you're thinking, you got it goofed up there, but let's pull up this calculator. I want to show you what 44 over the square root, 3 looks like in a calculator. 44 square root of 3 over 3. Okay, what is the calculator doing? In case you don't have one of those, it's really pretty simple. Mathematicians do not like square root of 3 being in the denominator, so they do what they call rationalizing this denominator, and they multiply this by the square root of 3 and the top by the square root of 3. You may remember in 5th grade when you were trying to get a common denominator in something, you had to turn 2/3 into something 6. You would multiply this by 2 and multiply this by 2. It's basically that you're multiplying it by 1, because 2 over 2 is 1. You're multiplying that by 1 and changing the way it looks, but it has the same value as the original. Well, that's what we're doing here, is we're multiplying this by square root of 3 over the square root of 3, which is technically just 1, okay, because anything divided by itself is 1, but we're making it look like this, and we end up with 44 times the square root of 3 is 44 and the square root of 3, and the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 equals the square root of 9, and we all know that equals 3, so that's where that calculator is getting the answer. Alright, thanks for bearing with me on that. I think it's worth noting that. Alright, let's see if this one's any different. We got the 60 over here. This makes this the long side. We got the 30 degree over here. This makes this the short side. They want to know the hypotenuse. I like these. These are relatively easy. That was double it from the short side, so that's got to be 18. Alright, got to know those little rules. Basically, you need to know this. 30, 60. You need to know that this is the short side. Put a 1 there. This is the long side. Put a square root of 3 there. This is the hypotenuse. Put a 2 there. Alright, then make sure that you got this thing oriented correctly. 30, this is the short side. Ooh, I like these. And when they give me the short side to work from, if I want to get the hypotenuse, I double it. If I want to get the long side, the one that's opposite of the 60 degree angle, then I multiply it by the square root of 3. 18 square root of 3. There it is. Let's see if we got one more example. Nope, that's it. Alright, have fun with it. Bye.